So I skipped to a minute 53 here so that you didn't have to watch a minute 53 of him shilling for his various means of making money. Not remotely necessary for the video. Just know that he spent a minute 53 shilling in a 13-minute video.
Another one of those articles where it's written by somebody who really, really wants you to know that they're an author and they can write. So they go all over the place. We get unnecessary history lessons, all this stuff. We're going to look at the whole article, but I'm not going to respond to all of it because otherwise this video would be like an hour long. Enough already. When people try to be cheerful about social distancing and working from home, noting that Shakespeare and Isaac Newton did some of their best work while England was ravaged by the plague, there's an obvious response. Neither of them had childcare responsibility.
Okay. That is a fair critique of this attitude. William Shakespeare and Isaac Newton did not have childcare responsibilities. Of course, this is something I've seen a lot of, this idea that we need to be productive even during the quarantine. And this goes into that capitalist idea that there's no such thing as downtime. We need to go constant growth. So let's see what he has to say about this.
Well, Newton is easy. He died a virgin. He never had kids. Shakespeare had 3 kids. And I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that he did help take care of them. He didn't...
Why would you assume that? Like, I love Shakespeare, but by all accounts, he was kind of one of those artistic assholes. Why would you assume he would take care of the childcare responsibility? Why?
Leave it all up to Mrs. Shakespeare. And there's another obvious response to this. Don't have kids with someone who doesn't help take care of them. Shocking, right? We're just going to go ahead and skip down a bit because we don't need a history lesson on Shakespeare. We're going to go all the way down past Shakespeare, past Newton, all the way past King Lear to what actually matters. A pandemic magnifies all existing inequalities, even as politicians insist this is not the time to talk about anything other than the immediate crisis.
She speaketh the truth? Yeah. Pandemics magnifies existing inequalities, and politicians are very much interested in keeping us focused on this one crisis so we don't realize how much it shows the problems in our existing world. This is pretty standard.
Well, here we are. Working from home in a white-collar job is easier. Employees with salaries and benefits will be better protected. Self-isolation is less taxing in a spacious house than a cramped apartment. Who decided to live in an apartment? But one of the most...
all the people who can't afford a house or saving up for their dream job to start a business, you know, that, what is that entrepreneurial phrase? Entrepreneurs live like most people won't in order to live like everybody wants to. Isn't that, living in a cramped apartment? Some people do it by choice, but a lot of people do it because they can't afford anything better. Right, lol, because we all are like, we want to be sardines. Exactly. Yeah, we all want to be packed 8 to a 2-bedroom apartment.
One of the most striking effects of the coronavirus will be to send many couples back to the 50s across the world. Women independence will be the silent victim of the virus. Wow, that is a...
I mean, I also disagree with that. I think that it's doing more to lay bare the inequalities in our system and how much we can do to fix those and how much we need to fix those. I don't think it's going to usher in a new age of Leave It to Beaver, as much of a fiction as that was in the first place.
A stretch and a half. Women are going to have to participate in the household while the men earn the...
No one is saying that's what it's going to go back to. What they're saying is women may be driven into these patriarchal relationships in order to survive as a result of the pandemic.
Money? And they have to do work? Oh my God. The outrage. Back to the 50s. Are you shitting me? It's not the tens and dozens of thousands of people.
You know what really pisses me off about Sinatra Says? I was just thinking about this, staring at this still image on a psychedelic background. Frank Sinatra was actually remarkably progressive for his era. He agreed with LGBT rights and was remarkably non-racist for a performer in the 50s. Like, I've read some interviews with him where he expressed disgust at some of the attitudes he'd witnessed in Hollywood and in the music industry. So I'm not saying he was a great guy. He wasn't great about women, definitely. but he had no issue with a lot of minorities that it was acceptable to be prejudice against at the time. So this chucklefuck wannabe fascist coming in here and using his likeness to spew this vitriol is just heinous to me.
People who have died, it's not the people who are sick losing their family, none of that. It's the women who are forced to do work around the house.
We can care about two things at the same time. We can be upset about people dying as a result of the coronavirus and be concerned about how this will affect women's lives, because we've already seen numerous steps to institute more authoritarian, more fascistic control around the world. America has been much more covert about it, but I was reading an article here. In the Philippines, shoot-to-kill order for anyone breaking quarantine, and Hungary passed a number of emergency powers as a result of coronavirus. The parliament granted the prime minister sweeping new powers, said that the law placed the whole of Hungarian democracy in quarantine. But there is no intention of, we believe that. They always claim they're going to protect freedom of speech until they actually have to. This is what is happening around the world. So yes, people are more concerned about governments stepping in and using the coronavirus as an excuse to create more authoritarian, more fascistic states and to strip rights away from these marginalized groups. You don't think they'll come for the women? They're trying to strip back what trans people won, and if they succeed at that, they'll go to gay people, and then it'll be blacks, and then it'll be women. So if we make sure our society stays egalitarian and continues to get egalitarian by uniting as one common class of oppressed people, we can make sure that the world we emerge into on the other side of coronavirus is a better world.
House, because they're not bringing in an income. How awful. They're the real victims. Purely as a physical illness, the coronavirus appears to affect women less severely. But in the past few days, the conversation about the pandemic has broadened.
Okay, I want to see if he has a link to this in his description. I doubt it. Affect women less severely? That is an interesting... Yeah. So let's go back to the coronavirus is a disaster for feminism. The Atlantic, is this? Yep, this is it. So the Atlantic, I think, is pretty trustworthy. Left-center bias. I hadn't heard that, but I have seen relevant data showing it affects black people disproportionately. Yes, mostly due to it affecting impoverished people disproportionately, but yes. So let's see. So the Atlantic is at least high factual reporting. This appears to be in the news section, not opinion. Appears to affect women less severely. Continues to worsen. Much attention in the U.S. has been given to improving the availability of the diagnostic test. Also associate more widespread testing with the statistic of greatest concern, survival from the disease. The rate of testing has been quite high in South Korea, yes. But we need to be clear that more testing saves lives by preventing the next infection, not by allowing doctors to catch an individual patient early. The treat early paradigm works when there is an effective drug against the disease. Give antibiotics early for sepsis, you live. Wait too long, you die. Coronavirus has no specific treatment. Indeed, the syndrome of a rapidly progressing lung failure that appears to kill COVID-infected persons is a familiar clinical condition. Many infections and exposures can cause the same problem. ICU specialists have been treating it for years. So why is Korea the poster child of so few deaths? For now, it is because of the vast difference in the affected patients. Plenty has already been written about how the population of Italy differs. Italy had a much older population, and South Korea has a much younger population, almost half of Japan's, 53rd globally. 90% of the more than 1,000 deaths occur in those 70 or older. Then there is gender. The gender split in COVID-19 cases worldwide is about 50-50, but there are gender differences in survival. According to data from the original outbreak in China, okay, that is potentially a significant difference. Okay, so yes, it does appear that it's accurate that women are less affected by coronavirus, so they're the ones most likely to survive, is the important thing here.
We are not just living through a public health crisis, but an economic one. As much as normal life is suspended for 3 months or more, job losses are inevitable. At the same time, school closures and household isolation are moving the work of caring for children. Are you shitting me?
Housework is work. It's labor. Anyone who keeps up a house full-time knows that it is absolutely a full-time job, even if you don't have children. This goes back to making sure workers are compensated for their labor. This is why under a more socialist situation, we would be calling for UBI so that people can stay home and take care of a house, especially if that's what they want to do, and still be able to survive. As it is right now, if the woman wants to stay, if anyone, man or woman, wants to stay at home, they basically have to have some other kind of income, or their partner has to have an income that can cover them both. And that is exceedingly rare in these times.
From the paid economy, nurses, schools, babysitters, to the unpaid one. The coronavirus smashes up the bargain that so many dual carer couples have made in the developed world. We can both work because someone else is looking after.
It's dual earner, not dual carer. Lots of couples these days are dual earners because they have to be, because wages have been stagnant for 40 years.
After our children. Instead, couples will have to decide which one of them takes the hit. But we're not going to talk about the ones where the guys take the hit, are we? No. Doesn't fit the narrative. Not at all. That's irrelevant. Guys deserve it because they're men, or for some.
We can care about two things at the same time. This is specifically looking at it and how it will affect women. There are other situations where we will look at how it will affect men. In fact, most of the things like this will be how it affects men. But this is specifically about how it affects women. We can both work like we can survive without it. Exactly. Yes, this is something I see in a lot of what we refer to as blue check liberals on Twitter. These people who work in journalism or other kinds of very highly educated fields and who are like, these people barely scraping by on 50, 60, 70K a year. Bitch, we're barely scraping by on 20 and 30. We would literally kill for 50K a year. So don't talk to me about scraping by.
Something, I don't know. Many stories, oh fuck me. Many stories of arrogance are related to this pandemic. Among the most okay, you're talking about Ebola.
Look, when I stumble over words, I'm in a live format, so it's expected. I'm also not drinking as much water as I should. This is pre-recorded, my dude. Re-record it properly and then use that take. It's not hard.
SARS, Zika, blah, blah, blah. All these outbreaks in other countries, not in the West. Let's just go ahead and skip ahead to the only bit that matters. Men's income returned to what they had made pre-outbreak faster than women's income. I don't know how the fuck you measured that, but okay. This distorting effect of the pandemic can last for years. Claire...
So I would assume this comes from measuring people who lost their job or were laid off as a result of the pandemic and came back to work more quickly, or who were in a better position to argue for more pay as a result of the Ebola outbreak or SARS or whatever. This is part of the gender pay gap, which they claim doesn't exist.
Wenman, I believe. An assistant professor at the Global Health Policy at the London School of Economics told me, "We saw declining rates of childhood vaccinations during Ebola. Later, when these children contracted the preventable diseases, their mothers had to take time off work." Well, that's
the other thing. Women are expected to take time off work to care for their children. Men are expected to work through it. So that can be the other reason for the disparity in income pre and post outbreak. Men would have worked through it, and so if they did lose a job, they're more likely to be able to get their job back and to go back to work more quickly than women who will have to stay and take care of kids.
That really doesn't sound like anybody's issue but the mothers. If you didn't want to take time off work, you should have vaccinated your crotch goblin.
That I'll agree with. Vaccinate your fucking kids, people. Seriously. We're living in a world without a vaccine for one disease, and you want to go back to a world with less than that. Let's not and say we did.
Same thing to moms in the West, too. You don't want to take time off work because your kid gets sick? Vaccinate the little shit. It's that simple.
But there wasn't a regular vaccine for Ebola and SARS. That's why it was dangerous, right? And even if there wasn't, that doesn't preclude them getting sick from other things that there aren't vaccines for, such as colds and flus, which the presence of SARS or Ebola exacerbates the lack of access to those things.
And what is it with these authors trying to give us a history lesson about everything? It is the argument that will not fucking give up. Things were bad once, so they will be bad forever. That is blatantly not true.
If you look at how a group or a society or a nation responded to a thing, and a similar thing happens anytime in the future, but especially within less than one generation, then it's a pretty good idea of how that society will respond to the thing. We've had multiple large outbreaks of diseases in my lifetime. This is why a lot of people dismissed the coronavirus when it first came out, because we compared it to SARS, to swine flu, to Ebola, to all these other outbreaks we've dealt with, and we're like, well, those weren't anything. And they weren't anything because they were properly responded to in time, because the people in charge took them seriously from the moment they heard about them and took steps to mitigate their spread. Trump didn't. Trump dismissed it and said it was a hoax and it was going to be gone by Easter.
We have been at a steadily increasing rate of living comfortably for hundreds of years. This is what you have to complain about? I got nothing. At an individual level, the choices many couples make over the next few months will make economic sense. What do pandemic patients...
Just because life is more flexible, more comfortable today, doesn't mean that we can't make it better and make things either. Yes, the most menial wage slave in America is more comfortable than a serf from 500 years ago. They have more flexibility, more free time, they eat better, they dress better, they live better, yes. But that doesn't mean that they have a good, dignified life. And we should strive to give every person a good, dignified life.
Patients need looking after. What do self-isolating older people need? Looking after. What do children kept home from school need? Looking after. All this looking after, this unpaid caring labor, you don't deserve to be paid for caring about.
Why not? Why is it I deserve to get paid for caring for someone as a job, like an in-home housekeeper or a babysitter? Think about it. Mostly girls I knew growing up made money all year round as babysitters. But when I was tasked with watching my sister for the night, I would never be expected to be paid for that. It's the same labor. Why is it when we do things for family, it's expected we don't get paid? And that's because society has decreed that doing things for family members means we don't get paid. So those kinds of labors should be free. And while I think ideally that should be the case, I do think that there are certain labors that happen, particularly with taking care of children, that should be societally supported. Because anyone who says that a stay-at-home mom doesn't do work has never met a stay-at-home mom.
Somebody, you psychopathic bitch. That is in-fucking-sane. Will fall heavily on women. You know what? Then just isolate yourself from the family. Don't be around them. Because of the existing structure in the workforce, it's not about social norms of women performing caring roles, it's about practicalities. Women added.
Yes, in a lot of relationships, women have the disposable job. This is part of the patriarchy, but yes, it is a reality that in most heterosexual relationships, women have jobs that are not part of a career. There are situations where that's not the case. But in most situations, the woman has a job they can just leave or take time off of.
I'm going to call her women for the rest of this. Who is paid less? Who has more flexibility?
She doesn't deserve my respect because I disagree with her.
According to the British government figures, 40% of employed women work part-time, get a better job, compared to only 13% of men. In heterosexual relationships,
this is because women are expected to be homemakers and caretakers, so they're not pressured into the kind of full-time jobs that men are pressured into. And that's ignoring the fact that women aren't expected to do the kind of physical jobs that men are. Now, this is all bullshit. Women can do any job men can do. I will stand by that 1,000%. But the fact is that for most people, they're just going to kind of do what is expected of them. And for women, that's to either enter teaching, healthcare, or secretarial work. And there's been a lot of effort in changing society so that women see jobs in construction, military, more business and finance, so they're not just the secretaries, they're actually the people making decisions, the people with secretaries. They're moving into STEM. There's been a huge push in recent years to move people into STEM fields. So he's responding to an article from the Atlantic where a woman is arguing that the effects of coronavirus will be felt largely by women and that it may set feminism back. But his dismissal of 40% of employed women work part-time, that's because a lot of jobs that women get are to make ends meet, or because they also have to take care of a kid so they can only afford to work part-time because they also have the full-time job of taking care of a house.
Women are likely to be the lower earners, meaning their jobs are considered a lower priority. Yeah, that's kind of how it works. When disruptions came along, this particular disruption could last for months rather than weeks. Some women's lifetime earnings will never recover. With schools...
So someone earning less is more likely to need it than someone earning more. That might seem a little odd to say, but especially if we're talking about married couples with children, if one person is making $30K a year and the other is making like $15K, then together they're making $45K, but they may not be able to make it on his $30K. Now they're not going to be able to make it on her $15K. But if we're talking individuals, someone making $15K probably will be hurt a lot more by losing that than someone making 30. How does COVID affect feminism? Well, whenever there's a pandemic, women tend to get put out of work before men because women tend to have lower paying, more quote-unquote expendable jobs. So in the wake of a pandemic, it may end up with women ending up not recovering and being more financially disenfranchised than men. And so women may turn to more traditional family situations to survive. Now, I disagree with the premise there because I think we're looking at a restructuring of society overall and not a regression of society. But that is the argument the article is making.
Close, many fathers will undoubtedly step up. I am honestly surprised you even mentioned that. But of course, there's a but there. But that won't be universal.
How can you disagree with that? Definitely, some men will step up, but it will not be universal. There are a lot of guys out there who still view doing laundry or the dishes or whatever as women's work. It's not women's work, it's fucking housework. Clean the bathroom, do the dishes, and do your own fucking laundry. Or stop bitching about how your wife does.
Okay, here's another fucking crazy idea. Maybe, just maybe, don't have kids with someone who's a fucking loser. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. But,
But a lot of people don't realize how much of a loser their husband is until after they have kids. I know that you can live with someone and learn a lot about them, but having children changes people. Now, for a lot of people I've known, it changes people for the better. It changes them to the proper fathers that we all consider, where they dote on their children, all that good stuff. But for some people, they completely want nothing to do with the situation. And those people don't always reveal themselves until the child is home. And by then, it's too late.
I'm not a modern day woman, and I don't even know what to say to this. I cannot even put myself in the headspace where I would consider caring for and caring about my children is considered labor. You can go on and on. This is ruining feminism.
So this is another thing that capitalism has done by turning labor into almost a dirty word. Labor is just work. It's things you do to improve your life or improve society. So yes. Now, I don't mind doing housework and calling it labor. Like, it is definitely labor. It's not something I want to do, but it's something I have to do to improve society, even though society is as big as my house. This is why we need to recognize that, first of all, to defang chucklefucks like Sinatra Says here, who has an issue with the idea of considering the full-time job of keeping up a house labor unless you're doing it in someone else's house. But also so that we recognize that you shouldn't have to work 2 full-time jobs if you live alone.
This is ruining feminism. This is ruining feminism. No. You're ruining feminism. You are ruining it for all the other women who do care about their kids, and they want to be able to take care of their kids without you trying to speak for them. And also, facial abuse. Facial abuse is ruining feminism. In the age of women acting
Facial abuse? I feel like this is a meme on his channel I'm unaware of.
like this, facial abuse remains based. Go check out their website. Must be 18 or older.
Oh,
But seriously,
okay.
who
It's a porn site.
the fuck thinks that? She basically spends 2 more very long paragraphs complaining about this unpaid labor and how people have to take care of their kids.
Despite the mass entry of women into the workforce during the 20th century, the phenomenon of the second shift still exists. Across the world, women, including those with jobs, do more housework and have less leisure time than their male partners. Even memes about panic buying acknowledge that household tasks, such as food shopping, are primarily shouldered by women. I'm not afraid of COVID-19, but what is scary is the lack of common sense, people, reads one of the most popular tweets about the coronavirus crisis. I'm scared for people who actually need to go to the store and feed their fams, but Susan and Karen stocked up for 30 years. The joke only works because Susan and Karen, stand-in names for suburban moms, are understood to be responsible for household management rather than, say, Mike and Steve. Look around and you can see couples already making tough decisions on how to divide up this extra unpaid labor. When I called Wenham, she was self-isolating with 2 small children. She and her husband were alternating between 2-hour shifts of childcare and paid work. That is one solution. For others, the division will run along older lines. Dual-income couples might suddenly find themselves living like their grandparents, one homemaker and one breadwinner. My spouse is a physician in the emergency department and is actively treating coronavirus patients. We just made the difficult decision for him to isolate and move into our garage apartment for the foreseeable future as he continues to treat patients, wrote Rachel Patzer, who has a 3-week-old baby and 2 young children. As I attempt to homeschool my kids alone with a new baby who screams if she isn't held, I'm worried about the health of my spouse and family. So what she's referring to is these dual income homes, because almost every home is dual income these days. They are forced into becoming single income homes, with the woman adopting the Mrs. Beaver stance of homemaker. Now, this person is lucky in that their spouse is a physician, so they're probably making enough to live on. Other dual-income families don't have that luxury. I agree with this. This is definitely a possible outcome. And it is a definite outcome in the short term.
Kids rather than spending money and have someone else do it. Guess what, bitch? A lot of us normal people that you claim to speak for cannot afford 24-hour every single day babysitting jobs. We cannot afford to pay babysitters, after school care, any of that shit. You must be living it pretty good if you're complaining about having your healthy kids home.
Right. The whole point is that we expect women to do these things for free, even though we have created a society where both partners in most relationships need a job for survival. This is a contradiction. So, if we were a proper egalitarian society, then there would be some sort of system so that someone with children would receive some sort of compensation for staying at home. And I know what you're going to say. Welfare, child tax credits, and WIC, and other systems that give payments to mothers. Those don't help if you have someone who's making some money but not enough money to survive on. You know, the kind of situations where the mom has to also get a job, or in reality has always had a job. You can't raise a kid on $20K. And I know the response to that, get a better job. How? The only way to get a better job is education, or experience. So if you want me to get a better job right away, I need education. Otherwise, I have to get experience, and in the meantime, I'm not making the money I need for my family to survive. So my wife gets a job as well. Only now, because the kids no longer have the 8-hour babysitter that is school, the mom doesn't have time for the job. So now we're back to that trying to survive on $20K in the middle of a pandemic. This is what she's arguing against happening, and this I agree will happen, at least in the short term. But I'm hoping that it doesn't put feminists to sleep. I'm hoping that it wakes more up about how we need to overhaul society.
Fuck you. She then goes on to talk about how single women who are parents have it worse because they're women for some reason. Again,
single parents face even harder decisions. While schools are closed, how do they juggle earning and caring? No one should be nostalgic for the 1950s ideal of dad returning to a freshly baked dinner and freshly washed children when so many families were excluded from it even then. And in Britain today, a quarter of families are headed by a single parent, more than 90% of whom are women. Closed schools make their life even harder. Yes, because before the pandemic, they could structure their work schedule around the school schedule. Be like, okay, I gotta leave by 3 so I can pick my kid up at 3:30. That kind of thing. Or working night jobs and sleeping while the kid's at school. But now the kid's not at school. So you don't have that buffer, that time when the kid is being taken care of by someone else, essentially for free. Other lessons from the Ebola epidemic were just as stark and similar, if perhaps smaller, effects will be seen during this crisis in the developed world. School closures affected girls' life chances because many dropped out of education. A rise in teenage pregnancy rates exacerbated this trend. Yes, kids doing things when they think they're going to die end up creating more life. It's kind of ironic that way. So, a rise in teenage pregnancy, coupled with a lot of kids getting the idea that they need to do things now or they're going to die, drop out of education, and then they can't go back.
Again, this is the whole fucking article, and I'm probably not even going to finish it because holy shit is this making me angry. And then immediately jumps right into another fucking history lesson. Who gives?
This guy sounds like he stares at his own ass in the mirror while he jacks off because it's so perfect. Yeah, he does.
A shit about what happened with Zika or Ebola. We're talking about this right now. She then talks about pregnant women because that matters for some reason. And I'm going to read this last paragraph here.
I don't know. Why would someone who's pregnant be worried about a highly infectious disease for which there's no cure or vaccine that's going around right now? I wonder.
We shouldn't make that mistake again, talking about how women weren't cared for enough during Ebola or something. I don't know. We shouldn't make that mistake again. As grim as it is to imagine now, future pandemics are inevitable, and the temptation to argue that gender is a...
Okay, I understand her argument here, and I agree with it 100%. We cannot let the current fronts that we're fighting on be pushed aside to deal with COVID-19. We've made a lot of forays into gender issues, and we can't let it subside. So I agree with the article here. Sinatra Says is an idiot because he doesn't see what women are fighting for.
Side issue is a distraction from the real crisis. Must be resisted. But it is, though. You're making complete nonsensical, non sequitur points. Women have it so bad, we have to take care of our children that we chose to have. Ugh. What we do now will affect the lives of millions of women and girls in future.
Not every woman chose to have children. I mean, that's not to say they're rape babies or anything like that, but sometimes, as a point of fact, my best friend, his baby mama has 4 kids. How many times do you think she chose to have children? She just chose to have sex, and then her upbringing told her that she had to keep it and that adoption or abortion were not good options. That's her decision. I support her decision, even if I don't think it has necessarily led to good outcomes. But she had that choice. She made it, but she never chose to be pregnant. She did choose to have a child, but that's due to other societal pressures.
Future outbreaks. Wow. Fucking wow. These people's ability to take something that is affecting literally hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. Nations are in lockdown. People are dying.
Dude, Sinatra Says is one of these people who literally wants women barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. So yes, he is 100% anti-choice. I'll bet his argument is that the father should have to sign off on it, which is a common argument and completely worthless because it's the woman's bodily integrity. She has the final decision.
Not able to breathe. And you take this issue and you make it about you. You fucking disgust me. You think it's labor to take care of your kids? Fuck.
It is. That's not a bad thing, though. Labor is not a bad thing. Labor is a good thing. You know, before capitalism atomized everyone and made it so that you had to work 8 to 10 hours a day just to survive, people actually enjoyed their work. There are people today who enjoy their work. They're usually well compensated for it, but not always. I would say people are supposed to enjoy work. But when you're forced to do menial work or not so menial work, you're just forced to do work and you feel as alienated as we are from the product of that labor, the joy goes out of it.
fuck you. You don't deserve the love of your kids. If you think it's labor to take care of them. Ugh, this one really made me mad. Wow. Oh my. Nothing makes me more angry than seeing these people who take this issue that is affecting everybody, fucking literally everybody, and they go, well, it affects me specifically because of X, Y, or Z.
No, what she's doing is explaining the effects it is having on this particular group, because that is relevant. I'm sure if we look, there are think pieces talking about Corona's effects on black people, Asian people, gay people, trans people, because it is affecting all of them differently, and that is an important thing to look so that we can best address those issues. But of course, you just want to make it seem like it's all about women when it's really just, this is how this is affecting women. Please consider this in addition to everything else.
No, it doesn't. You're just a cunt. I would like.
And a minute of shilling at the end. That's 3 minutes of shilling in a 13-minute video. That's impressive. So yeah, coronavirus is going to affect women. It's an odd thing because I think it's going to affect women disproportionately, white or black people disproportionately. It's going to affect all sorts of minorities disproportionately. And those are all things we need to consider. Those are things we need to factor into how we're going to respond to the coronavirus. But Sinatra Says is an idiot. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you liked it, like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thank you. See you next.